Well, before we get into the show proper, let's pour one out for the biggest death in the whole season. Every fan theory ever. Welcome to The Watcher. I am your cult leader, Tom Bond, and I just watched the finale of WandaVision. The time has arrived. It's all done and dusted. And, I have some thoughts, some good ones, some bad ones. As I mentioned in the intro, a lot of fan theories were just way off, myself included. And some people are taking that as a negative, and I can understand that. Because in a lot of ways, it felt like this finale played it very safe. And that could be disappointing to some, but let's just get into it. I'll get into it a bit more specific. First of all, let's just run through what happened in the episode. Number one, we kind of started where we left off last week, which was where Agatha had the kids kind of strung up confronting Wanda. And we found it very interesting that she takes magic from those undeserving, which explains how she got all the power from the witches in Salem in her flashback in previous episodes. Now, it was a kind of an action-packed sort of intro. In some ways, I think we all kind of expected that this would be kind of the action episode, as it were, as a lot of these Marvel kind of finales, even the films, tend to be. But anyway, she does a lot of tricks. One of the most interesting ones that she did was basically, and I feel like they could have gone into this a little bit more, was that she used her spells to snap the people of Westview out of it, and Wanda's kind of forced to confront her demons and her grief, as it were. Although I don't think they really handled that all that well going forward, but I'll come back to that in a sec. And she basically isn't really able to kind of control them and ends up kind of snapping and accidentally choking them, which, again, they're really kind of proving the point that Wanda doesn't necessarily know what she's doing in some ways, which we should also mention that one thing they did confirm, which as a lot of us had suspected, was the book is in fact the Darkhold. It's named as the Darkhold. It's named as, a book from the Dark Dimension or whatever. This is kind of what we always expected. The thing is now, some people are kind of nitpicky now. Some people are saying, well, this basically means, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't happen, but because they showed the Darkhold and had a different cover. It had Darkhold on the cover, very subtle. But, I mean, I'm pretty sure the cover of that book changed anyway. And of course, they can just explain that away, like, oh, hey, it got a new cover. Or maybe that was a copy of the Darkhold or something. But anyway, that was interesting. We really have a very interesting line, probably, and this is probably going to factor more into Doctor Strange too. Is when she says essentially, what a Scarlet Witch is. She has her own page in the Darkhold, and really, as this episode goes on, we see that this basically was, for lack of a better term, the origin of her being the Scarlet Witch you recognize from the comics, I guess. But she says basically you're a witch without a coven. And most interestingly is the line, and I say this for Doctor Strange too, was she says your power exceeds that of the Sorcerer Supreme. Of course, Doctor Strange being the Sorcerer Supreme. That could be an interesting showdown. We don't know how Doctor Strange 2 is going to go yet, but I do have some ideas at the ending of this. So they also made a very interesting line, which is that she says your destiny is kind of to destroy the world. I don't know what that could mean. Do they mean literally destroy the world? Do they mean kind of tear into multiverses? Which, oh boy. Speaking of multiverses, take a big fat L, myself included, I guess, because we found out what the story is with Quicksilver, and it's nothing. He's some guy, and he had a magic necklace that kind of kept him in prison and gave him these powers, I guess. And his name was Ralph Boner. And that was the joke, and that was it. That we're gonna. I'm gonna get that in the end. That was a really big misplay, in my opinion. But all the same, what's going on with all this happening? Of course, then Agnes is or Agatha, I guess. I keep forgetting what we should call her. Agatha is fighting Wanda. Vision is fighting the White Vision, and as well, Speed and Wiccan kind of disappear when Agatha is fighting Wanda. But Wiccan uses powers and basically sees and hears his mom is in trouble with all these people from Westview. And because of that, we get some very interesting moments. In this moment, basically, Agatha is kind of confronting Wanda. She's like, what sort of hero does this? What sort of hero tortures people like you've been doing? And she's kind of agrees and she tries to get rid of the hex. But in doing that, she watches as Vision and her kids start to kind of disassemble, get torn apart. We talk a lot about House of M for good reason, because a lot of people kind of thought that might be where it's going. And I do think that the kind of animation, for lack of a better term, the effect of them kind of disintegrating looked a lot like the kind of very famous House of M cover, with Scarlet Witch's face kind of coming apart and kind of jigsaw like pieces. It kind of looked a bit like that. But of course, it doesn't go that way, because that would be a very thing if it was just like, hey, I killed everyone, we're good, yay. She can't bring herself to do it. And because of that, we get ourselves a superhero showdown. Woo! The whole family's involved this time. So we have Wanda, we have Vision, we have Speed, we have Wiccan, and we have this lovely, cool kind of superhero shot. Really reminded me of The Incredibles, which we saw early on in the cinema marquee. There's also another cute cinema marquee moment actually. So there's a moment where Wanda drops a car or throws a car at Agatha, which also she's dropped cars in was it Civil War as well. She dropped a load of cars on people, so I guess that's her go-to move. But she's crushed by the car, and we kind of see her boots, which is very much a shot like the Wizard of Oz. And later on, when the town is kind of morphing, we see Wizard of Oz in the marquee. So that was kind of a cute little nod there. There's a few other nods in this that we'll get to. So Vision is fighting White Vision. Uh, Wanda's fighting Agatha, obviously, and the kids are taking on Sword, or I guess the military, which, man, they really took him out very easily. They just basically kind of like uses magic, ran around, took all their weapons, and that was it, really. And I think the reason I say there was a kind of cute nod is we see that Speed kind of takes some of the glasses off one of the agents and puts them on. Really like what he looked like in the comics. They had those kind of goggles. So that was kind of a cool moment. But another cool moment followed it pretty much directly after, because the big question is, what's happening with Monica? Because we haven't seen a lot of Monica lately. We obviously know she's kind of, some degree, has powers, but we kind of saw it explored again here, when she has sort of her big hero moment, I guess. In my head, when I was kind of booking this or writing this in my head, I was like, okay, well, Quicksilver is going to fight Monica, and that didn't happen. Like, basically, she just revealed, like, hey, yeah, Quicksilver's not Quicksilver, and then this was her hero moment. I kind of thought we might get a big kind of superhero showdown that she might be involved in, but no. What she does do is she stands in front of the kids as Hayward tries to shoot them, and basically absorbs the energy of the bullets, and her eyes start to glow yellow. Now, her eyes glow another color as well in the show. So basically, it looks like whatever energy she absorbs, that's the color of her eyes, which is a nice visual effect, actually, because as much as I kind of was okay with Monica getting powers, I did kind of think, like, so the effect is just glowing eyes, huh? I mean, I know I say that with that being the intro to my, and art to this show, but I mean, again, this is a 2-bit podcast. It's like, come on, Marvel. But I think that's a kind of a cool visual flourish. So that was the closest we kind of see of her using her powers, and that really was her hero moment, standing in front of kids and taking the bullets. Which is, there's a nice bit of kind of, I'm going to quote George Lucas again, it's like poetry, so it rhymes.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
With the original Quicksilver, who stood in front of a child and basically sacrificed himself with those bullets. And she did, and she survived, so she's better than Quicksilver, I guess. Yeah, that was kind of it for Monica. I did find it kind of weird. Like I guess I don't know. Hayward kind of seemed like a kind of intelligent villain, and then he kind of just by the end he was like, "Oh, shoot the kids," which I kind of want to talk about the way that wraps up as well, because it's interesting. Now, my big concern, and I did talk about this last week. I think I said, like, basically I think the finale is going to be a laser show, and I was really hoping it wasn't, and it kind of was at times. And I was really disappointed at one point because it looked like Vision and White Vision was just going to be, oh, they're flying and they're shooting lasers and tussling in the air. And it kind of evolved into something very interesting, which might have been one of my favorite parts of the whole episode. In fact, one of my favorite parts of the whole show. First of all, maybe I'm drawing lines that aren't there, but there was a moment where, like, he sneaks up behind, I think it's like Vision sneaks up behind White Vision when he has a laser going, and he has him like a chokehold. I really thought that was like a Man of Steel homage, and I was like, oh my god, he's going to snap his neck like Man of Steel. That would be awesome. I mean, Vision is like an intellectual, he's meant to be very, very intelligent, and having two of them like face off each other, I think like just reducing them to shooting lasers at each other, and using their powers all the time really kind of sells out that character. So I'm glad we had this cool kind of character moment. It actually kind of reminded me of Ultron and Vision at the end of Age of Ultron, where they kind of just match wits, as it were. And he talks about the ship of Theseus, which is a kind of philosophical thought experiment where basically it's like, how many parts of the original can you replace before it's no longer the original, etc. And they kind of have this cool moment where they're like basically saying, which one of us is the true Vision? And the White Vision is like, you think you're true Vision, but surely, you're like, he's like, technically, I have no parts of the original Vision, however you do. So and it was a very cool moment. And in doing that, I think a lot, like I could suggest that possibly they could merge, and it did really seem like they were hinting at that, but it never went that far. Probably for the best, actually. It would have just been a kind of an easy out. So that was one regard it didn't fully play safe, although it does really look like we're going to get Vision back as regular Vision at some point. But basically, the created Vision, the one by Wanda, our colored Vision. Taps him on where the Mind Stone was and kind of unlocks the data he has in his body that was a mystery to him. So he has all these memories of Vision's life. So seemingly that's going to come eventually. Maybe the real Vision going forward in the MCU. What the kind of end result of this was that he just flew off, and we didn't really get an answer. But he's the only Vision existing at the end of this episode. So there's an interesting kind of arc there left over. So what that becomes, who knows? As we said, the White Vision in the comics is a lot more kind of, I guess you could say, logical. He's not as emotional, which is weird to say about Vision, but he's very much kind of a cold, calculated kind of robot. Whereas this Vision obviously wasn't. So I don't know. It feels like there should be some sort of development there. I don't know where that's going to come in. I mean, possibly Doctor Strange, but like, it kind of feels like we'd just be saying that because hey, Wanda's in Doctor Strange. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see when we catch up with Vision and what that will lead to. I hope it isn't just as simple as, hey, I thought about it and I got a new paint job. Everybody, I'm back. Vision's back in business. So yeah, that was one of my favorite moments. I really liked double Vision, as it were. It just seemed like a really cool way. And like in a finale that I think you could really throw some barbs at for just being pew pew. Having that kind of moment really, really worked for me, and it suited the character down to the ground. Now, on the other hand, we did have sort of Wanda's and Agatha's kind of spell off, their magic competition kind of thing going on. Now, I will say there was some things I did like about this. Like, we had, and this was kind of like, I actually wish there was more of this. Like, I'm not a massive fan of the first Doctor Strange, but what I really liked was like the finale, because it just felt like, like, I mean, like, let's be honest, right? Like, I've watched some of the Harry Potter movies lately, and like, a lot of the time it's just like laser, even like it doesn't make magic very, very interesting when it's just here's a beam of energy. It's not that interesting. And that's something that you could probably throw against this finale at times. But it's cool when they do something creative with that, and something they did that was very creative, and it actually was a callback again to Age of Ultron. I mean, really, Age of Ultron is aging really well out of this. Because I think it's actually the first spell she possibly uses in Age of Ultron. She sneaks up behind Tony Stark and goes like this into his head, and he has a vision of what the Avengers are going to become. So she does that same thing again, into the head of Agatha, and she goes back to the Salem witch trial from previous weeks, and basically the corpse has become reanimated, and we're thinking, oh, they're going to tear her apart. I thought that might be the ending first. There's a certain part of me that's kind of like, kind of wish it had been, because I think that would have been a cool creative ending. Again, like the Dormammu at Quanta Bargain scene in Doctor Strange, but basically those witches realize she is the Scarlet Witch, and as a result, they tie her up. And I pointed out last week that the mother witch had like her own crown, and I thought it was really cool. And again, a nice seed planted is that we get the kind of headdress in an illusion on Wanda's head, which of course we're going to come back to pretty quickly. So yeah, that was a kind of cool, interesting moment. I kind of wish there was more of that in that kind of final fight, I guess, between Agatha and Wanda, because there was times when it did just become, here's my magic and here's your magic, pew pew pew, and that can be a little bit disappointing. It kind of felt like they steered into some of the tropes that people kind of throw against Marvel at the time there. Now, what also was interesting is that Wanda, like, Wanda's quite an interesting character in this regard, in that she's someone who doesn't seem to know a lot of magic, but like she's quick to learn it, and certainly that's going to be accelerated now. But like she and I think we all kind of, as soon as the problem is like I'm going off track here, and this is something I had an issue with Game of Thrones, especially like when like it was like, oh, on the last Game of Thrones, and then it would just say something and you're like, okay, so now I know what's going to happen in this episode. Cheers. Like I remember when like Khaleesi, I'm going so off track here. Spoilers for Game of Thrones, I guess. Remember like there was a previously on, and it was basically just like every bad thing anyone's ever said about Khaleesi, and it's like, oh, so Khaleesi's going to be the villain in this episode. Okay, that's where this is happening. So, like in the previous on, it was like, "Oh, these are runes, Wanda. That means only the person, or the person who casts it is the only one who can cast magic." Blah blah blah. And of course, that's what it led to. So she flies into the sky. That sounds so stupid out of context. To confront Agatha, and we have some really cool shots here of her basically kind of powering up. So, like, anytime she uses her magic, Agatha is sucking some of that magic out of her, and that's kind of the idea, basically, where it's like you're going to lose your powers because you don't deserve it. Because I take magic from people who don't deserve it, and you don't deserve it, Wanda. Ha ha ha. And it was kind of okay, but it was literally just like shooting big, red CGI at each other and purple CGI. They said something that was interesting. I thought it was a good line. I don't really know if it ever. I'm trying to figure out if it had actually any meaning or it was just a cool line, which was they said a spell cannot be unmade. This world will always be broken, just like you. And I was like, huh, okay. Not sure if that rings true, but anyway. So yeah, Wanda basically we see a few times where she has kind of a stray shot, and see what she's done is she's put the hex, or she's put the runes on the hex, which means that basically Agatha can't use her magic, and Agatha is helpless. She takes her magic back from Agatha, and when she does, she comes back in her full Scarlet Witch regalia, her headdress, cape, all this stuff. I mean, she looks freaking amazing. I mean, she looks amazing anyway because it's Elizabeth Olsen, but that is just a gorgeous costume. You have to like the people who do the costumes for Marvel just nail it. I mean, they managed to somehow get like something kind of fateful, even something goofy like this just fucking worked. So really props to them. I think this is something that kind of needed a kind of a slow burn. Now again, you could probably nitpick it and be like, why did she have that costume now out of nowhere? Like, and obviously someone's going to say, oh well, she saw it in the vision, like in the previous episode in the Mind Stone, but like, did her original version not see that? Because I just got this costume now. Why now all of a sudden? Again, I don't think it's a big deal. I mean, Wanda's magic is obviously impressive. She hypnotized the whole town. I'm willing to believe she just was able to say, "Hey, I've got an idea for a costume." Boom. So yeah, that was basically kind of the big fight. It is cool, I guess, that it wasn't just that there was like some degree of intelligence in beating her. I guess, I mean, it wasn't a lot of intelligence. It was like a trick. But like it wasn't like, oh damn, that magic spell you had was too powerful and it hurt. I'm dead. Oh. So it was good that there actually was some degree of that to it, and because of that, the big question is, what do we do with Agatha? And here's another shot behind me in the video version of her in kind of better lighting in that outfit, which again we had seen teased in some of the posters. So I'm gonna basically put it together. But it's still just it's an excellent costume. They managed to kind of like update it and make it kind of more believable. And there's a really good shot at the end where she's got a hood up that in the outfit that I just thought looks fantastic. They really nailed the costume. In my opinion, I mean, taking that headdress and making it look not totally ridiculous is just like a win in itself. A lot of people are saying it looks like Magneto's helmet. Maybe, I guess it does, but like I wouldn't look that far into it personally. So, what do we do with Agatha? As I said, Agatha is kind of a mentor to Wanda. In the comics, I could see her possibly taking that role in some degrees, and she did kind of use that to bargain. She was like, "You're going to need me," basically, but she says that you're going to stay here in the role you wanted to inhabit. You're going to be forever, Agnes, the nosy neighbor, and she does that magic. And she says basically, if I want you, I know where I need you. So it's kind of a bit foreshadowy there that presumably she's going to come back in. And again, what's really interesting with the Marvel Universe at the moment is there's so much going on both Disney Plus and in cinemas that it's like, who knows where some of these characters are going to appear again. But I think we're more guaranteed now more than ever that minor characters that are characters that in the past would have just been like a one-off and disappear seem more likely to appear in the world somewhere down the line. So I also found it very interesting, and I don't know, is this something to look into, but and they didn't really hit on it that much, so maybe it's nothing. But I thought for a minute that Agatha was kind of about to give her a warning when she got cut off and turned back to Agnes, but maybe I'm just looking into something that's not there. So yeah, we had then we kind of got some of the cool moments here were that kind of emotional kind of scenes. Because the whole show has been about grief, and we had that line last week, which I mentioned, and then it's taken on a life of its own. Some people kind of like I don't know. This is one of the things where I'm like, that's a really good line, but then there's some people like it's the greatest line ever, and then there's other people shitting on it. Like it's a really good line. Give it a bit of space. Like I'm not suggesting it's like Shakespeare, but where they're like, what is love if not grief, persevering or whatever. Like that's a good line. Give it a chance. Like stop tearing into it. Again, we can never have something can never just be in the middle somewhere. It has to be the best thing or the worst thing ever. So yeah, we have a kind of a few emotional scenes where Wanda basically starts to say goodbye to this life she's had in Westview. So the hex starts to kind of rescind, or whatever way you want to put it, and they kind of go home to their house. They put the kids to bed. There's moments in this episode that just really got me. You know, she puts the kids to bed and tells them that we'll be a family forever, and she says goodbye and she says thank you for letting me be your mom. Which was a very sad moment. Um, they close the door behind them, and that's the last we see of Billy and Tommy. So yeah, I think a lot of people were kind of thinking they might be young Avengers potentially down the line. They could come back. I don't know, but for now, they're gone. Although there's a tease about where that could go at the end. Then we have a scene with Vision and Wanda, which I liked. I thought there was a nice motion to it, and I think that I think obviously, look, I mean, I don't even need to say that the actors nailed it this one. That's just a given. I mean, they've Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen have just been fantastic in the show, and Catherine Hahn. The whole cast has been excellent, really. But I don't even need to say that. And although I do need to give a shout out to Paul Bettany, who trolled everyone, which was amazing. This is something that people started theorizing on last week, and I was kind of like, maybe. So Paul Bettany was basically like this whole thing, and I think we teased this. I might have been talking about this from like the second episode, where he was like, "Oh, I worked with a big name actor I've always wanted to work with," and it was himself because he was playing opposite Vision. So, well, what a master troll. Well played, sir. I mean, everyone's probably annoyed at that, but fair fucks. That's pretty great. So outside of that, they say goodbye, and it's essentially like he's like, "What am I?" And he says, "You're the piece of my son that lives in me." So that kind of explains sort of, maybe the magic in the previous episode where he came out separate with that yellow kind of magic. He says, "You are my love," and he says, "Who knows what I might be next?" We have said goodbye before. We will say hello again. Very sweet moment. Very sad moment as well. Wanda stands then just in the plot of LandaVision border, completely alone. Now, again, like you could talk about this in some ways, especially when we get to the post credit scene that I'll talk about in a sec. Like if the whole show was kind of about Wanda moving on and kind of dealing with her grief, it kind of took away the barb a little bit of that. I know some people have been saying that as well, and I kind of agree. Like, because it wasn't like goodbye Vision; it was like, hey, I'll see you again. Don't worry, there's another Vision out there. Remember, bye. So, it didn't really give her a moment to kind of actually accept her grief. And by the end of it, it didn't seem like she'd fully moved on at all. So, again, I guess that is what was leading to some people suggesting that this finale could be a bit disappointing. But again, all the fan theorizing, which I suppose I've contributed to in some degree. But I'm just having fun. Don't blame me. Is probably what led to some people being disappointed, and also the fact that it feels somewhat unresolved. And I think I think one of the bigger problems with this is that it sort of had to carry the massive burden of expectation because this is the first thing in the Marvel's fourth phase, and it was not ever meant to be. It was meant to be like fourth thing in this phase, but Falcon and Winter Soldier got delayed, and Black Widow and Eternals got yanked from the schedule. So because of that, it's kind of has a lot of lofty expectations on it that maybe it didn't fully deserve. But all the same, I do feel like kind of undercut the whole moving on and dealing with your grief thing. But it was only a kind of a minor thing. It didn't bother me too much because every character comes back to life. That's comics. Yeah. So she says goodbye. And then as she walks through Westview, she gets all these dirty looks, which I'm sorry, well deserved. I want to talk about that in a sec because I feel like Wanda got off lightly in some ways. As much as I love that character, like yeah, you did just keep a lot of people hostage, didn't you, against their will, because you were sad, and I understand that. But there is a nice moment I thought, and this was a moment that nearly got me, where like she's catching all the glares, and Monica says like, they won't know what you went through, which again, they probably do. And Monica's like, if I had that power, I would have tried to bring my mom back. So it was kind of a sweet moment, and I think Monica is a character that they really sold really well. I think this is a character that people are going to be very invested in. Again, I do think you should have given her a big moment that they really didn't do, but it sounds like she's going to be in the MCU for a while because they set up her future in this as well. So, big kind of moments after that, Wanda basically says, "I don't understand my power yet, but I will," and she flies off. Takes one last look at Westview as she flies away, and then disappears, and the show ends. But we did get two mid-credit scenes. One which I think is pretty clear cut. The other one probably open to a bit of interpretation. So in our mid-credit scene, Wu and the FBI are starting to control the scene. Wu didn't get especially much to do, but he did kind of take charge after Hayward is arrested. And Monica is asked by kind of an agent to follow her to a theater because she has to tell her something, basically. Or she says something like he wants to see you or whatever. And in doing this, she reveals herself to be a Skrull. Dun, dun, dun. And she says that an old friend of her mom heard she's been grounded and wants to talk to her. And she says, "Where?" And she points upward. So, what does that mean? It's kind of pretty obvious if you've been following along. But basically, last time we saw Nick Fury, he was in space. A lot of us kind of said, "Oh, space, so possibly Sword." He's also been working with the Skrulls. So, it looks like Monix is going to space. And she's going to be part of Nick Fury, whatever Nick Fury is doing in space, presumably some sort of sword operation. Where does this lead? Pretty clearly, or pretty obviously, it would seem this is going to be Secret Invasion, the next, or not the next, but one of Marvel's Disney Plus series. Samuel Jackson's in it. Talos, who is Ben Mendelsohn, is a Skrull. He's apparently going to be in it. Big storyline from the comics. It's interesting that it's a Disney Plus show. But who knows what that's going to be? I think that could even be like a big kind of crossover event in the MCU on Disney Plus. I don't know. I'm just speculating now. But yeah, interesting stuff. Does mean we're going to see more Monica. And who could argue against it? I thought that character was really interesting. And I thought it was a great performance by Tiona Paris. Or Parish, I'm not sure how to pronounce that name. So yeah, interesting stuff. Again, what does it mean going forward? That's my reading of it. It seems pretty clear cut, that one. What wasn't clear cut was the end credit scene. Because we have two post credit scenes in this, and we kind of. I'm not going to talk about the filming of it because I find that interesting, and I have a theory. Tom's theories went where I squeezed it in, baby. Last episode, woo! So we cut to basically Wanda kind of relaxing in a cabin seemingly, but then things take a bit of a left turn when we see that an astral projection of Wanda is actually devouring the Darkhold, looking into it, and possibly even other magic books. But yeah, she's looking and studying the Darkhold, the Book of the Damned. So, dun, dun, dun. But what was also interesting is in this scene, she heard the screams of Billy and Tommy. So, a couple of things we kind of say, like, presumably this is her trying to get her kids back. Presumably, next time we see her, she is going to be incredibly more powered. But again, Darkhold is sort of an evil book, so is Wanda kind of still on the edge of being a villain? And I kind of do think, like, in some regards, if you were going to make Wanda a villain, let's keep that going. Let's keep that idea train going. I guess you probably would do it in the movies. I mean, like, and it's not like this has been obviously WandaVision has been a massive success, and a lot of people are going to see it. But if it's a big moment like that, maybe you do it in on the big screen, maybe because it feels like it would have more resonance and a bigger impact then. But I don't know. There's a lot to take out of that. Like, I mean, I'm assuming they're very much tying it to her kids. As we said, next time she's going to be in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Doing this is exactly what Doctor Strange did. In Doctor Strange, he was an astral projection and read a lot of magic books. She's more powerful than Doctor Strange, so I don't know. Is she going to try to get her kids back and tear the multiverse into a million pieces, and that's what leads them to some sort of conflict? Is Wanda going to be a bit villainous? We don't really know. But it was an interesting end credit scene. The reason I didn't talk about the way it was presented is because my theory here, okay, and maybe this is nothing. Now, in the past, what's kind of happened is that a lot of time directors of other MCU entries or upcoming MCU entries will direct kind of like the end credit scene. So, like, for example, I think like James Gunn directed the Guardians end credit scene that was in Thor: The Dark World, and it kind of goes on like that. There's a few of those. Um, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe it's just because it was a very similar shot to some of the shots we see in Evil Dead, and there was a cabin in the woods. Was that directed by Sam Raimi? Who's directing Doctor Strange? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'm just maybe I'm reaching. I just found that kind of interesting, but all the same, pretty interesting ending. So let's talk about where this kind of leaves us. As I said, I feel the finale sort of played it safe. I didn't think it was a letdown. I did think it was quite interesting. But it did kind of feel somewhat unfinished, and I think that's going to annoy quite a few people. But again, it's hard to stay annoyed for too long because we have 1 week and then Falcon with Soldier. So I don't think that it's going to scare many people away from these shows because it was an enjoyable experience all the way, and there's a lot of good changes coming out of this. So as for where this leaves us, Vision. I mean, it seems like Vision is going to come back eventually in some form. What is he going to be very changed? I don't know. I just hope that they don't bring him back and it's like, hey, it's all normal again, you know. So that's kind of interesting. White Vision is well, he's White Vision now. I don't think he's not going to stay white for long. I don't think, obviously. I mean, if he's like the original Vision, he can just change his appearance anyway at any time. So I guess that doesn't really matter. So interesting. I guess we are, Vision is going to be part of the MCU going forward as well. So that's another death kind of undone. So if that's kind of a nitpick, I totally get it. As for where it leaves Monica, I mean, she's going to be an agent of S.W.O.R.D. In space for the Secret Invasion. She's clearly a superhero moment now. I am kind of annoyed that they didn't really give her that superhero moment. It was kind of very brief. But we're going to see the full extent of her powers at some point. As for where it leaves Wanda, again, that's one of the most interesting things. Because I like I said, I think Wanda got off really lightly here. Like she kept the whole town hostage. Hayward's being arrested for shooting at kids, which dick move, but they're also not real kids, and also he tried to stop a town from being held brainwashed by a crazy superhero lady. I mean, she kind of feels like she's faced more repercussions here than just flying away to Canada or wherever the fuck she was. I don't know. Kind of feels like she got off lightly. Maybe the repercussions that are still yet to be recognized. But all the same, that's WandaVision. First Disney Plus Marvel show. And I think it was pretty solid. I think, again, it's one of those ones where I was thinking this during the week. How rewatchable is this going to be? I think in a lot of ways, it benefited from the week to week. In that we kind of got to devour it and theorize and all that. But on the same kind of note, in the long run, knowing this was the finale and there was a lot of unanswered questions and theories that didn't pan out for some people, it kind of was damaged by the week to week in some ways because we had a lot of people have built up all these expectations of Mephisto, and maybe Mephisto will be in the MCU at some point. The Dark Hole is in this for one. I think there's an image in Loki there. It looks like Mephisto. Mephisto could be the villain of Doctor Strange too. We don't know, or he could have a bigger part at all, or maybe he's not at all, and we're all just grasping for straws, on the Satan train. The other thing, and this was something where I'm like, okay, Marvel, this was a bad move in my opinion. They hired Evan Peters to play Quicksilver or fake Quicksilver, and like I kind of said last week, and this is not kind of being salty that a theory didn't play out, but I'm like, that just seems like you're being kind of antagonistic to your audience, and it's just a dirty trick. I don't know. I think people are kind of annoyed at that. I mean, I guess we could see Evan Peters as the real Quicksilver, but it's kind of dumb. I don't think it was a really good. I don't think it was well executed. I don't think you should have brought Evan Peters back for that because all you're doing was you kind of baiting fans. And I guess it worked in that regard. It got a lot of people talking, but it didn't really lead to a satisfying conclusion in that regard. And as for what, I mean, really, when you look back at this, like, how pivotal is this going to be to the MCU? It's hard to tell in the case of Wanda. I mean, it brought Vision back, which is pretty pivotal, and it introduced Monica Rambeau or Spectrum. So, I don't know. It kind of feels like at the moment, and it's hard to say without, because of course this is the first part of Phase 4 and there's nothing else out yet. Kind of feels like on your rewatch you might be able to skip parts of this, which I don't necessarily like saying because I did think it was a good show, but I don't know. As far as giving us this journey to get to the real Scarlet Witch in the comics, it worked totally. But was it a good show overall? Yeah, it was. It wasn't I think like it had a lot of potential at times, and then it kind of fumbled towards the end. In the finale, certainly, it kind of felt like it fell into some of the more formulaic things and played it safe, which I found a little bit disappointing. As much as I do think it was a decent finale and a decent series overall. Regardless, that's WandaVision, and that is the Watcher of WandaVision. We're not done though, because next week everyone else might be taking a break. You might be saying, hey, we don't need to talk about anything because Falcon Winter Soldier isn't out until the week after. Well, guess what, buddy boy? We don't take breaks around here. No chance, Lance. We are doing a special episode, kind of wrap up roundtable discussion on WandaVision, on the Falcon and Winter Soldier, and the MCU in general. I'm going to have two very special guests. I'm not going to say it's Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen, but I'm not saying it's not them either. You never know. All I'm saying is do not miss out. Next week, we're going to have a very special video. And of course, the week after that, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And we might even do some stuff with the Watcher with Falcon and Winter Soldier in. So yeah, stick around. Hope you've enjoyed these videos. If you did, please give it a like and subscribe. Because remember, I'll be watching. Take care.